How do they do it? Why do they do it? Riding and crashing and riding and winning and always faster and faster.
Welcome back everybody to With Antone MotoGP, and I want to thank everybody for watching the last couple of episodes. It's been fantastic. Now we're in the post-season break here with Antone MotoGP. I want to take a look at some of the biggest issues that happened for the teams throughout the 2025 season and take a little bit of a look at some of the major things that happened for the season. So that said, this year, Aprilia in 2025, it was one of the strongest and strangest stories in modern MotoGP history. A season, statistically, it was their best yet, but also it was the worst title defense of a MotoGP champion in the history of MotoGP. Other news, it seems that CF Moto are keen to buy KTM. It's just they want to have a race in China. You remember it used to run around in Shanghai. I think it finished up in 2008. So that will determine whether CF Moto actually does make the purchase of KTM that we talked about earlier. And it seems that the radios between the pit box and the riders are a disaster. Zarco can't hear a thing. He said it's a mess. It's not practical. The wind noise, the rider movement, and the sheer noise of the MotoGP bikes makes it not a usable system for both rider and for pit boxes. So, the Aprilia roller coaster of 2025. Early season management fails to final season victories and a brilliant performance towards the end of the season. So how can a team that looks like champions on paper, but they never came close to defending the title? That's what we're going to look at this week in a little bit of detail. So what's this paradox? They can't defend or even mount a challenge to defend the 2024 MotoGP Jorgemartin's championship, yet the season performance and the bike development has been one of the best in the paddock. So why was the title defense one of the worst in history? Well, it started out in the worst possible way. Jorgemartin in the KL early tests, he was sent out on that used Michelin rubber. Bad choice by the management, bad choice to send out a used Michelin. We know that the Michelin rubber performs different on reheat. And of course, they let Jorgemartin return on the Super Motard. He crashed again. And then, of course, we had the whole Qatar MotoGP where he came back to ride. And for me, it was a bad management decision to make him race the whole of the main Grand Prix. He ran the sprint, and famously remember those classic photographs and images of him injured on the side of the road, unable to breathe. So a defending champion not in the top 5 or the top 10 is unprecedented. To finish over 500 points behind the champion, okay, we've got sprints, makes it a bit different. But the actual 500 points is not something we've ever seen. And then, of course, we had Jorgemartin trying to defect from Aprilia. Rivola stood tall, stood firm. He was supported by Espeleta. And, of course, oddly, it seemed to have worked out. And Martin was forced to abandon his plans. So the worst in history, some of the worst injuries in history, I think, attributed to that. So what about the season in 2025? Why was it their best season? Well, Bez delivered more than anyone else could have ever imagined. He finished the championship in P3. He was consistently in that top 5, and he had those back-to-back wins late in the season. And the genuine speed of the Aprilia transferred down to the Trackhouse team, where you see Fernandez take that famous victory in Phillip Island. And they ended up finishing second in the Manufacturers' Championship, which is the best ever performance for Aprilia. So why did it occur? Aprilia's late performance was really outpacing the internal management of Aprilia. The bike was going faster. It had a better chassis. It had great aero. It seemed to be able to turn, and it seemed to be able to use its tyres well and get great grip. But the management of the team at the start of the season and mid-season had not matured to the same state and match the performance of the bike. Early in the season, the team were not ready to be a championship team. They were pushing Martin. He had no real support. We remember that famous press conference where he came back and no one else sat there with him. They weren't ready to be a great team. There was miscommunication to the media. We had Rivola after that famous Bez win in the British Grand Prix saying, see Jorge, the bike is fast. They weren't united as a team. And as we've said, to win a championship, you need a championship team. The rider cannot do it all by themselves. It has to be a team effort. Look at Pecco and his team. Everybody needs to be on the same page. So Aprilia this year, they had to learn how to be a top factory. But mistakes cost them. And of course, these mistakes cost Jorgemartin. And his broken body is a testament to how perhaps the management was not at the level it needed to be a successful team. So the saviour of the year, Bezzecchi. He was the lucky benefactor of all of those Martin injuries. You know, in every negative there's a positive, and he became the positive of the team. He became the main leader of the project, and his consistency made all of the difference. Now, Fabiano Stellacini, the head of the engineering thrust there, without them, I think Aprilia would have collapsed with the start that they had. Fabiano was a huge influence on the bike development and the stability of the package. And he was able to give Bez what he needed. He was able to take his riding style and match the Aprilia. And also that development went down, as we mentioned, to the Trackhouse team, which obviously helped Agura and obviously Fernandez with that famous victory. So the proof of the season is in what they actually did. They had big gains throughout the season, great mechanical grip, really good corner speed, rear stability and traction, and that gave them consistent race pace. They can even beat the Ducatis if marcmarquez is not on the grid. Now, it's funny how Bezzecchi was actually responsible for that crash, removed Marquez for the whole season post-Indonesia, which was a real sad thing for the show. And a real sad thing, I think, for us as fans not to see Marquez there. But, you know, racing accidents happen. He paid his price for that, Bez. But Fernando and Bez ended up 1-2 in the recent test in Valencia. And seemingly, they are the most prepared team for 2026. I used the phrase in one of my episodes, a strange maturity. Something has changed with the Aprilia factory. In my opinion, they have now risen to a level where they can support. And it was really the Jorgemartin crisis, threatening to leave, performance clauses, Espeleta. I think all that turbulence brought the team together. Rivola has actually done a pretty good job, even though I'm not a fan of his particular style early in the season. I think where he took the team and where the team is going is great. So what's the future? Well, Fabiano Stellacini, he will develop the 2026 for the next 3 to 4 months, he's on record as saying. But then, of course, he's going to have to focus on 27 as the new teams get ready for the new regulations and the new Pirellis. So that's Aprilia 2025, a mix of progress, promise, and painful decisions. A year where they prove they can win and beat almost anybody except maybe themselves. So what do you think? Can Aprilia be a champion team in 2026? Do you think they can take the title? And what about the what if factor? I mean, I think the what if is still sitting around for the team. What if Martin hadn't injured himself? What if Bez couldn't pick up the actual running? The season could have been so different. And what do you think about this CF Moto and their demands to have a round in China before they purchase KTM Racing, which seems a foregone conclusion? And do you think radios are the future? Anyway, why don't you drop down below your thoughts and your comments here in the postseason with Antone MotoGP. Drop a comment below. I'm happy to interact with you guys and talk about Aprilia and see how we're going. And I hope that we can have a really good conversation on this. So if you've liked today, then give it a like or give it a sub or share the video for someone who's into MotoGP or might be getting into MotoGP for 2026. Okay, I appreciate you watching this week and bye for now.